You ready to do it?
Ready to do it.
All right. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am very excited to have as my guest today, Dr. Graham Taylor. Graham, welcome.
So nice to be here, Guy. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So Graham is a clinical psychologist. He's chief learning officer at Triad and founder of the Taylor Study Method, one of the Triad family's EPPP preparation programs. Graham has over 25 years of experience working in both hospital and private practice settings, working with individuals, couples, and families. Graham resides in Honolulu, Hawaii, where he maintains a private practice. He's also host of the podcast. Was it mental health?
Behavioral Health Today.
Behavioral Health Today. I was on it. Episode was 63, I think. And I have to tell you that you're phenomenal. You are a phenomenal interviewer. And I would encourage people to check it out, not because of me, but because of Graham and the way he's able to encourage and invite things and nuggets out of their guests. But anyway,
you are very kind. Very kind.
Well, I mean it. Share with our listeners, Graham, where you're from originally, and obviously you're in Hawaii now.
Yes, I grew up in Pasadena, California.
Okay.
And we had a great time growing up there. I came to Hawaii in '84. Came here for graduate school. Went to school here for my master's degree. Then I worked with the state mental health department for about 3.5 years, and went back for my doctoral degree in psychology. And it's a hard place to leave once you're here. It is paradise. That's what they say, and it is. It's really a wonderful place.
I've never been there. My wife's been there, but what island are you on?
I live on Oahu. It's kind of the main island, if you will.
Okay.
One kind of the center of commerce and it's kind of the gathering place. So it's a wonderful place to live. Raised 3 kids here, and have had a wonderful life, both professionally and personally. And it's a nice place to be.
Awesome. All right, look, let's get into it here. How the heck did you get into this field?
I love this field.
Yeah.
Aren't we lucky to be practicing in this field? Oh my goodness. I just absolutely just love every single day. I went into college. I went to the University of Pacific up in Stockton, California. And I thought I was going to be an English major. I like to write and thought I could be good enough. And then I got my first paper back, and I think I had more red corrections than I had black ink on my paper. So I thought maybe I won't be able to make a living out of this. And then I was in my second year, and I watched in a sociology class the movie Ordinary People. Timothy Hutton, Mary Tyler Moore, Donald Sutherland. And I saw this family who was in this tremendous pain following a loss, a trauma really, of their oldest son due to a drowning, and Timothy Hutton being the survivor of that. And this family in pain, but they couldn't look at the difficult stuff. And it resonated with me that somehow this difficult stuff had to be taken a look at. And I also saw the therapist's role in this and how he came alongside.
Oh, he was awesome, huh?
Wasn't he awesome? Yeah. Tremendous.
Judd Hirsch,
that's right.
Yeah.
Right. It was just, it was so nice. And I just thought, what a great healing. It was honest, it was real, it was gritty. And that's kind of how I see trauma. And so that movie really resonated with me personally about how do we take a look at the hard things that are hard to talk about and name them with some courage and some bravery and maybe some skill,
Mm-hmm. So if I can interrupt for a second. So you saw this movie and it resonated with you, and you thought to yourself, I want to get in there and I want to open stuff up for people. You felt you could do that or wanted to do that.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
What resonated with me is that I think the hard stuff kind of growing up, maybe even sometimes in the family, those hard things are hard to look at, and no judgment, just hard things are hard to look at. And, people say, well, Graham, you went into psychology to figure yourself out, and the answer is absolutely. That's why I went into psychology to figure myself out, and to be able to take a look at those hard things that I think are important to take a look at. So that's exactly it, Guy. I saw that therapist being able to help that family by looking into those hard things. And I also saw that family struggling to look at hard things and the courage that they had to look at. So I saw myself on both sides. Timothy Hutton and kind of in that dad. I also saw myself in that therapist. And it absolutely changed my life.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I was drawn to Judd Hirsch's role in that very organic,
Yeah,
authentic, kind of indirect, but he was able to get in there and in such an awesome way. It
yeah.
was very inspiring.
There's some really powerful scenes in the movie. I really recommend it. There's some very, very powerful scenes that, again, that are just real, and they are gritty, but they're honest. I think therapy is, there's science behind it, there's theories behind it, but it's really about honest talk
Right.
and trusting that the four walls you're in with the person you're seeing and the relationship between them can handle just about anything. If we can stay with it long enough, we can more times than not find a way or make a way through those times. And that's what I saw, Judd and Timothy do in the movie. That just really encouraged me.
So there's, you get inspired by this movie, and then there's oftentimes a gap between that type of inspiration and being able to what do that,
Yeah,
perform like that,
yeah,
be that. Talk a little bit about your journey. What happened after that movie? You got
yeah.
into graduate school or what?
It's really good. I was in a school where the psychology was more behavioral. We did a lot of research and things along those lines. I thought that was good, but I didn't feel like I was getting kind of the therapeutic components of it that I needed. So my advisor said, well, why don't you go into social work? They do more kind of the therapy things, and I'm not sure that was the best advice, but not so much going into social work, but there were other ways to do the therapeutic training. But I went into social work, had a wonderful time here at the University of Hawaii. And then I went to work with, as I mentioned, the state mental health department here, worked out on the west side of Oahu, and had probably one of my best experiences of my life. The population we worked with, the clinicians we worked with, we had a multidisciplinary team, and we just had some wonderful, wonderful times. But I wanted to go deeper into therapy, and I wanted to understand things with a little bit more complexity and a little more richness. So I went back into psychology, got my doctorate there. And then I grew up in a medical center, a trauma medical center, the biggest center here in the Hawaii. We service all the Pacific Islands and
Mm.
Oahu. And so I grew up there professionally. I did my residency there, my fellowship. I came back on staff. I was the head of the health psychology program. So I got to go up into the medical floors, and it's kind of a candy store for psychologists in a hospital. There's just so many things that we got a chance to do in people's lives to touch with. When we got worked with the cardiologist department and the diabetes department, and just had a wonderful time. But for me personally, to bridge what I saw Judd Hurst doing and what I wanted to do, took some time. I got some great training. The hospital I worked at it's called Queens Medical Center,
Mm-hmm.
and I was there for about a total of about 7 years, and just tremendous mentors, tremendous teachers and training there that I received in my residency and my fellowship. And then coming back on staff, I got to be part of an APA training program there that we taught other interns and fellows. But I did some of my, my own work after I got done in my own therapy. And then I went in, when I was going into private practice, I asked probably the therapist here on the island to kind of mentor me and be kind of a consultant. So I stayed with him for a couple of years just to kind of help me bridge that training that I had into the next level that I wanted to go into. And he was extremely helpful in that with me. So, but
How so?
well, I think you make a lot of mistakes. I made a lot. You make mistakes when you come into these things,
Yeah.
and you come in. I came in earnest, and wanting to help. I wanted to be a good therapist, and I was excited. I was watching what I saw, in Judd Hurst and other things, other therapists that I watched, and I wanted to be good. And I saw people in pain, and I thought I could help them and work through that. But I realized, I think for me early on, that when you're earnest and excited, you start unintentionally starting maybe to control some of the therapy and how things go, maybe even a little bit prematurely to people's readiness. Maybe premature interpretations or trying to make connections to things,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe kind of forcing the process. And that for me was something that I had to learn, to kind of slow down with. I think I was doing that because I wanted to help people out of their pain, or I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
again, to be seen as a good therapist, or maybe even, early on, my own anxieties about having to hold some really difficult stuff was hard. And we had to sit there, and it's uncomfortable sometimes. And so I
Yeah.
think maybe I was a little I was, I was a little premature in doing some of the things that I was doing, but kind of learned to kind of slow that down a wee bit.
That reminds me one of my first experiences with a supervisor who was amazing. I walked into her office and I was very frustrated. And she said, how's it been going? And I said, uh, I don't know what's going on. I mean, these people are not listening to me.
Right, I know. You think
And
it's
she,
just right.
and she said, just so beautifully straightforward. She said, what makes you think they need to listen to you?
Yeah,
And I was floored. I was like, what do you mean? I got this degree. I'm studying. I know all this stuff.
yeah,
And it was a smack in the head. It was a
yeah.
real, real wake up call.
I had something similar. I had this one person one time, kind of a supervisor, say, "Graham, you're not that good." Meaning you, it's kind of sobering, but meaning you can't take that person from that place.
Right.
But I think maybe what you're referring to too, and that what I learned is that I can learn, and what I think Judd Hirsch did so well, we can learn to sit with somebody. And if we can begin to do that, then we can begin to understand it from their perspective. And those interpretations and those connections, I think, are the things that they make for us. And we get to witness that process and watch that healing while we're there with our skill and the things that we're doing, but watch that evolve rather than try and make it happen. That's kind of those were my takeaways, I think, in my early training.
Were there some moments? I mean, I'm sure there were, but are you able to recall some landmark moments where you're like, okay, this is what I need to be doing or not doing, you know, um,
Yeah, I think for me, uh, well, a little bit like what you said, when I really wasn't getting some of the movement in the cases that I thought we could move to, or I saw where we needed to go and where we could go, and I saw maybe that we weren't getting there, and I realized that I was probably interfering with that in some unintentional ways, well intentioned, but unintentionally, I was maybe kind of stalling that process a wee bit by trying maybe to force things or make things happen. And I think, for any of us to change, I know for me in my life and my therapy and my growth, there has to be a readiness and an openness and someone patient enough to
mhm.
sit with us until there's a readiness and we have that aha openness that occurs, that then those interpretations that we've been holding as therapists for a while, the patient begins to kind of take themselves and begin to inform us. And again, that witnessing process that we get to go into. I have some very patient. I've been in therapy with a handful of folks, and just had some really great therapists who've been very patient, very kind, very gently nudging in right directions, and that's been very helpful to me just in my own growth and finding being able to kind of do that within some of the work that I get to do as well in the lives of people that I get invited into.
Mm. In terms of your own, work and your own uh, personal growth and
Yeah.
seeing therapists and so forth, uh, talk a little bit about your experience with that. I mean, when you got into graduate school or when you decided you want to study psychology, had you already been seeing a therapist?
And,
What was that like?
yeah, it was. It's a good question. I came into it seeing what I wanted to do, and then realizing that, and being told and encouraged, realizing fully myself that I need to be on the side of the couch first. And so I didn't do that until I was in my doctoral program. I went through my master's program, and in one of my doctoral program, I went into therapy and had a wonderful experience with a guy who was just kind of a Judd Hirsch kind, uh, and just very, very, very thoughtful and considerate the things that he did, and kind of saw the way that I needed somebody to be in a relationship with me to uncover some of these things. I think, for me, going into therapy was uncovering in the fact that I was always really good at leading the discussions and being there for people in the way that they needed me to be there for them. And the training and experiences, things in my family, and it was all good. But I wasn't very good, maybe early on, in understanding what was going on for myself. And in terms of countertransference, those things that we bring into the therapy on our own, we bring our own stuff, whether we're conscious of
Mhm.
it or not. And I don't think my own stuff was necessarily interfering overly with the therapy I was doing, but certain things would trigger me, that would make, that I'd walk away with. And so the therapy that I was engaged in really helped me understand myself, I think. I think it helped me with my ability to empathize and take it a little more slowly. Um, I think what I had to learn was how to recognize things that within myself that maybe I hadn't been all that conscious of, that I kind of denied, or maybe I hadn't cultivated a real clear understanding about growing up and maybe even in my early adult years. That with that understanding, I think I've probably become a better therapist overall, recognizing what's going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
I also think, as you asked that question, what comes to mind, it's a good question. I don't think we can take people to places that they need to go unless we've been there ourselves, to some degree, to be able to
Right.
hold that place and join the minute. Um, so yeah, it was me learning to identify what's going on inside myself, being able to put words to that, being able to really fill that part of myself out in ways that I hadn't done before.
Mm-hmm.
That I think probably stifled me in some relationships in my life, my own personal growth, and I didn't want that to interfere with the therapy that I was doing.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel that that process was that evolution for yourself? Did you feel the kind of tangible rewards in a sense with the therapy you were doing with others?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It allowed me. That's a good question, man. That it allowed me just to be more present. I think when I recognized, when I was recognized kind of from a countertransference perspective, when I recognized what was coming up for me, I could sit with that
Mm-hmm.
and kind of just compartmentalize that, and kind of hold it there. Or if something was, really touching me, recognizing what that was about with me, so that I could kind of hold that and then go back to be more present with the person I was seeing.
Right.
Um, I think it also allowed me, it's a good question, it also allowed me to use consultative times with other colleagues. I've got a colleague that I work with closely, and I'm able to bring my own reactions to things, and we get to debrief some things, and to process our own stuff so that it doesn't leak into and inhibit in any
Mm-hmm.
way the work that we're doing. So yes, that awareness allowed me to recognize it in the moment, be more present in the way that I needed to be, and then to go process that on my own
Mm-hmm.
post session.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exciting to me. What you're saying reminds me when I got into graduate school, I was like 36. So I had got in late, as it were. And I had seen therapists, and I kind of thought I had my own stuff all
Right,
taken care of.
right,
I've got it. I don't need to do
right,
that.
right.
And I was so uh, just off the tracks. I mean, I didn't realize the importance of
Oh, man.
our own being, our own doing our own work, and not only doing our own work, but being able to be with that and manage that when you're working with someone.
Yeah,
Because as one of my previous guests had said on the podcast, it's not a matter of if you're going to get triggered, you will get triggered. And being able to deal with that, and through experience, and being able to realize that I don't need to save the world, and I wasn't going to save the world, but being able to be in the moment, really, for me. And I think I might have talked about this on your podcast, but there was a certain definite weight lifted off my shoulder, but
yes.
kind of a willingness to be okay with being in the moment.
Yeah, you know what I like about that? What I like about that is that sometimes, before, when you're earnest and you're eager and you want to help, and sometimes you get stuck in the work. And I don't know early on if I felt okay being stuck.
Right.
But sometimes you get stuck, but it's not even really stuck. It's a process where the work is happening. Things are working, things are churning, things are being cultivated. They just haven't come to the surface yet. So it's a time of work under the surface you may not see. But I think now what you're describing, it allows me sometimes to sit with people and just say, man, we are really stuck, aren't we?
Right. Right.
We're stuck in this. And
Right.
sometimes there's such a relief when they just say, we are, right? And it's okay, right? And if we say, yeah, but let's just stay stuck together.
Right.
And if we can stay down here enough together and stay stuck, chances are we're going to find our way out.
Yeah.
There's just something else going on that percolating down there that we just can't see yet.
Yeah.
It's going to come. Let's just make it safe to stay stuck.
Yeah. There's a certain um, what uh, honoring of the moment, honoring of the creative process between two people. You seem to, I don't want to seem, but you kind of emanate that. Was that always? I mean, I'm sure that was always there, but that, to what degree was that there when you were started out?
Yeah, that's really nice. I appreciate that. Very kind. You know, I don't know quite how to answer that right now. See, this is where you put me on the hot seat here, brother. Uh, uh,
And in part, we're kind of talking about this,
yeah,
but
I think,
go ahead.
I think there's something. I think even as you and I, have talked in the past, we get to talk again today. I think there's something that we form uniquely with each person, and I think there's something inherently opportunistic in the best possible way, some synergy with each person that we come into relationship with. There's something creative in there that's going to be unique just to the person you're sitting across from or working with. And I think it's inherent in the relationship. I
Mm,
think I bring, you know, maybe an actualizing potential. Maybe we kind of, but I can't do that alone.
right.
It's trusting and encouraging that person to join me in something that I don't know the way through or the answer to all the time, but trusting that somehow we can together. And I think it's maybe I think that creativity comes out of trusting the process.
Mm-hmm.
As ethereal as that might sound, trusting the process that people can come together in a really joint way with a great intention and their hearts in the right places and focused in the right direction. We can just do some phenomenal work together. And I think that creativity and that part comes out within the context of that relationship. That's where the relationship is healing, I believe.
Mm-hmm. So, what are you doing now? You're seeing people in person, online, or what?
Yeah, I do both. Doing some exciting things. With a colleague of mine, we do a co-therapist couples therapy. So we're like four-way sessions. We see them together, and then we see them individually for a while, and then we bring them back together in a four-way session. We just kind of put together a paper a couple of years ago that talked about this approach. Very exciting. Did several conferences around it with APA and locally here. Uh, so that's pretty exciting. We also are weaving in some EMDR into our couples therapy work. I also do EMDR in my own private practice around trauma, and we're taking EMDR kind of to another approach to use EMDR around
Hmm.
one's core self meaning. That's really, really garnering some very exciting results. We're gathering data right now, doing some pilot type work on it, and we're going to be probably looking to publish some things and make it. We just gave a presentation in Canada on
Hmm.
this approach using EMDR with couples therapy, trauma, etc. So I'm doing that. I have a private practice. I get to do the podcast. I had you on, as I mentioned.
Wait,
Uh,
wait, wait, let me go back for a second.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
EMDR and the core self meaning. Talk more about that.
Well, it's I've been doing. I was trained in EMDR back in the early '90s, and I don't think I was mature enough in my profession or our profession to understand its very significant role in our work. Uh, and I believe that I think everyone is traumatized. We think of trauma as the 9/11s,
Mm-hmm.
the war stories, and those truly are what gets referred to as the big T's. But when I say trauma, I'm talking about anything that's outside the realm of normal experience. And normal experience, the ideal experience would be that we have perfect parents, we have perfect upbringings in our schoolings, we have perfect friendships, and those things are all facilitating our healthy development, both in the terms of ourself and our sense of self, our esteem, etc. But life is hard. We get knocked around, we get dinged and knocked and dented, and so there's some trauma because these events are outside the realm of what would be healthy, normal experience, and we walk away with our not just traumas, but something much deeper than that. And and what we're finding being deeper than that is what it means to oneself, what it says about oneself. Um, and what I'd love to do at some point, maybe is come back on the show, and when we kind of get this a little bit more public, to kind of share what we're doing and maybe provide some of the things that we've got in terms of graphs and some illustrations about how we can, with EMDR, really reset one's
Hmm.
cornerstone.
Wow.
that has such a rippling and impactful effect on one's life in some very, very meaningful ways, truly. Some of the stories I hear coming out of the people that I'm working with right now, and I do an extensive follow-up with each one that I take them through with this approach. And the changes in their life, Guy, are just so very significant. Not just the reduction in a trauma. In fact, it's not even target incident focused. It's not even looking at a specific trauma. It's looking at about the takeaway about oneself from that trauma. So it's very, very exciting.
I was going to ask you about that. That's really interesting. The reason why I asked about that is because I think I described on your podcast, I had been bullied as a young kid, and
Yes.
that incident really impacted the trajectory of my life in various ways. So I'd be very interested to hear how that work evolves, and definitely have you back on to talk more about that. But let's kind of switch gears here.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with Triad and this podcast that you're doing?
Yeah, it's such a joy to do the podcast. It's a privilege for me to do it. I'm the tailor in the Taylor study method, like you mentioned.
Crazy! I just realized that. That's amazing. How cool is that?
I came out of my doctoral program needing to study for my licensing exam, and I thought, man, I got to study for this behemoth of a test. And I went to some of the workshops, and they were good, but I thought there had to be a better way. So I created the Taylor study method out of my own preparation method.
Look at you.
And then, as it turned out, AATBS, Academic Review, that are part of the Triad family now. The Taylor study method had a chance to purchase those two. Those were our biggest competition. So we purchased those two. And then we had Triad come in and purchase us, all three brands. But we have a tremendous CEO. We've got a great board that have really taken Triad to a whole nother level in such a well-rounded way. I was able to move out of some of the day-to-day things that I was doing with Taylor study method into a little bit more of a consultant role. And then now I've moved into the podcast host for Behavioral Health Today, which has been a joy. I get to meet guys like you, which I love, other professionals in the field talking about a variety of topics related to mental health and what's going on in our world. So it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. And are you publishing once a week on that, or?
We are. Yep.
Awesome.
I think we launch every Tuesday, I believe it is. We've got about 80, not nearly what you got. You're in the hundreds, brother.
Yeah,
that's really good. We're getting some good shows together. We got them out there right now, and our guests are terrific to be getting to know and interview.
Awesome. All right, so people are going to listen to this, and they're going to want to contact you. They're going to want to get in touch with you. They're going to say, I want this guy to be my therapist. How's that going to happen? How do they reach you?
Well, if they want to learn more just to kind of about Triad, they can get a hold of Triad and get to know me a little bit, or the Triad whole family. We've got the Triad family's got a tremendous number of opportunities for professionals in this field. We have opportunities. We have Hello Triad, which is a awesome.
Oh, right. I jumped on there.
Did you?
Yeah. That's really cool.
It's free to members. Not members. It's free to those who sign up, who are in the field, and it's just a wonderful site. We have training materials for those coming up our younger clinicians coming up that want to go get trained and ready for the licensing exams. We have BCBAs, we have social work, we have mental health counseling, we have psychology, and we have LCSW training for licensure for that.
Wow.
We have professional services that are being put together. And just a very, very creative team together that's put together a wonderful set of products for those who want to come in. So there's a ton of things to see. So triadbehavioralhealth.com is a way to get into that. If they want to come listen to the podcast, it's Behavioral Health Today. It's on all the Apple and all the other sites that have podcasts.
Awesome.
If someone wants to get in touch with me directly, they're more than welcome to do so. I'll give you my email address, actually, if they like to. It's GT, stands for Graham Taylor. So GT33 at mac.com.
Okay. And I'll have that linked up here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. All right, Graham, as we wind down here, how about a go-to book recommendation, whether trauma related or not, or whatever? What do you got?
Yeah. One of the books I read very early on, and I read probably every 3 years, is Scott Peck's The Road Less Traveled. It's like this compendium of good ways to think about living life. It's a very well-rounded book. He's a tremendous author, and it's just got some age-old good wisdom. In fact, I use it sometimes I work with a little bit of a waiting list. So I'll tell people, hey, if they say, well, what can I do in the meantime? I'll say, well, why don't you use this as a primer? Read this book.
Mm-hmm.
And so they come in kind of half-cocked, ready to go, because they begin to read these things and they see themselves in it, and things begin to get explained. So that'd probably be my go-to book, The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck.
Awesome. I want to check that out.
That's a good one.
I know it, but I never read it.
I would love to see what your thoughts are on that.
Awesome. Well, look, I knew this was going to be good. I knew you're phenomenal. I mean, again, it was a awesome experience being interviewed by you, and it was great having you on this podcast. Like I said, you emanate this, genuineness and directness that I hope my podcast is about. So it's a pleasure having you on here.
Well, you're awesome, man. I appreciate the relationship professionally and personally. Thank you for having me on. It's been my joy, and always great to be. I look forward to having you back on our show again. I look forward to coming back on yours at some point.
All right, man. Take care in Hawaii.
Okay. Appreciate it.